Nolan Dempsey slammed the door of his matte black Aston Martin a little too hard, furious at the sputtering sound it had made on the Pacific Coast Highway. Brand new, and it sounds like a lawnmower, he muttered, tugging off his sunglasses as he scanned the small, dusty auto shop nestled between a diner and a surf rental shack. The weathered sign read, T&A Auto Repairs. He narrowed his eyes. Not exactly Beverly Hills, but it was the only shop for miles. He stepped into the garage, expecting a grease-streaked old man with a cigarette hanging from his lip. What he didn't expect was the woman under the hood. She popped up at the sound of his footsteps, wiping her hands on a rag. "You lost?" she asked, pushing a loose strand of dark hair from her face. He blinked. She was young, maybe late 20s. Her jumpsuit was unzipped halfway down her chest, revealing a black tank top beneath. Her face was streaked with a little oil, but her eyes were sharp, confident. "No," he said, surprised at how quickly the irritation drained from his voice. "Car's making a weird noise. Just started." She crossed her arms, arching an eyebrow. "Let me guess. You redlined it on the highway and now she's coughing up revenge." Nolan stared. "Are you the receptionist?" She laughed loud and real. "I'm the owner. And the mechanic. Talia Avery." He looked her up and down. "You fix cars." "Only the expensive ones," she said, tossing the rag onto her workbench. "Pop the hood." Still processing, Nolan followed her outside and opened the hood. She leaned in, her fingers brushing parts he didn't even recognize. "You over-revved it," she said after a minute. "Could be a bad timing chain or a loose belt." Nolan glanced down at her hands, deft, steady, covered in grease, and for the first time in a long time, he forgot about meetings, mergers, and stock tickers. "You really know what you're doing." "I should hope so," she said, pulling back and meeting his eyes. "You want it fixed or not? You have time now?" "Depends." She eyed him. "You planning to hover and ask a million questions, or are you gonna let me work?" He chuckled. "I'll get out of your way." She nodded to the waiting area, which was really just 2 cracked leather chairs and a tiny coffee machine. Nolan sat, but instead of checking his phone, he watched her through the open garage door, watched her pull her hair into a messy bun, twist under the car, talk to herself as she worked. It was mesmerizing. 45 minutes later, she wiped her hands again and walked over. "You're good to go." Belt was loose. I tightened it and flushed the oil too. "She'll purr now." "How much?" "200. He pulled out his wallet, paused. "You take card?" She nodded. He handed her his black titanium card. She glanced at it, then up at him. "Nolan Dempsey," she read. "This thing could buy my shop." He shrugged. "I like cars." She handed it back. "And I like fixing them. We all have our thing." He smiled at that. "You ever work on vintage?" She lit up. "Only every chance I get. I have a '69 Shelby back in LA, needs some work." Her smile faltered. "You're from the city?" "West Hollywood." She whistled. "That explains the attitude." He laughed. "What attitude?" "The one that says I own 6 houses and none of them have a real kitchen." He grinned. "Guilty. Though it's only 4 houses." "Of course." He looked at her, really looked at her. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met. No pretense. No games. Just pure stubborn talent. "Have dinner with me," he said suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "Tonight. Let me thank you properly." She hesitated, studying him. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Dead serious. I don't do fancy restaurants," she warned. "I don't do anything less than 5 stars, he countered. She laughed again, but this time it sounded more curious. "All right, billionaire. 1 dinner. But I'm not wearing heels. I'll pick you up at 7. She crossed her arms again. "You don't even know where I live. You'll tell me." She shook her head, amused. "Fine. But if you show up in a tuxedo, I'm slamming the door." He leaned against the doorframe, grinning. "Deal." As he drove away, the engine purred like a dream, but Nolan barely noticed. His thoughts were stuck on the woman with oil-streaked cheeks and a laugh that had cut straight through his walls. Talia. He didn't usually remember names, but hers? He'd never forget it, and he didn't know it yet, But this wasn't just a dinner. It was the beginning of everything. The sun dipped low over the water as Nolan stepped onto the cracked concrete outside Talia's shop, now closed for the evening. The ocean breeze tugged at his shirt sleeves as he leaned against a sleek black Rolls-Royce Ghost. Watching the garage door roll up, Talia emerged, wiping her palms on the sides of her faded black jeans. Her hair was down now, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a dark denim jacket over a loose slate gray tee and heavy-soled boots that had clearly seen years of work. No makeup, no jewelry, just her. "You're early," she called out, locking the door behind her. "I don't like being kept waiting," Nolan replied, pushing off the car. "And I didn't want you to vanish. I said I'd come, didn't I?" "You did. But I wasn't sure if you would." She gave him a look unreadable. "Where are we going?" "Santa Monica. Private table. Quiet view." I said no tuxedos. "I left it at home," he said, opening the passenger door for her. She glanced at the car. "This one doesn't sound like a lawnmower." "Yet." She slid in and he closed the door behind her. As he walked around to the driver's side, he caught her examining the interior, polished wood accents, hand-stitched leather, ambient lighting that bathed the cabin in a warm glow. "You sure this isn't too fancy for a mechanic?" she asked once he slid in beside her. "I don't care what you do. I care who you are. Then you might be the first." They drove in silence for a while, the city lights bleeding into the sky as they neared the bluffs. Nolan pulled into a gated lot beside a cliffside restaurant. No sign out front, no valet, just a single attendant who nodded and opened the gate wordlessly. Inside, the restaurant was dim and intimate, a long stretch of glass windows giving way to the sea. A hostess led them to a corner table already set with a bottle of wine breathing beside two crystal glasses. "I didn't order that," Talia said as they sat. "I called ahead," Nolan said. She studied the view, then leaned forward. "You do this a lot? Have dinner?" "Yes." "Bring someone who doesn't care about my money?" "No." She tilted her head. "So what made you ask me? You didn't flinch when I handed you that card. I've seen worse things than rich guys. Such as engines catching fire, customers who scream at me for being a woman, guys who assume I can't tell the difference between a carburetor and a coffee cup." He watched her closely. "And you stayed in it anyway. Because I'm good. Because I love it. And because I don't need anyone's permission." The waiter arrived with 2 plates of grilled halibut over saffron risotto, garnished with lemon butter and microgreens. Talia blinked down at the food. "Are we supposed to eat this or frame it?" "Give it a chance." She took a cautious bite, and her eyebrows lifted. "Okay, that's unfairly good. I don't like wasting time on things that aren't." She set her fork down. "You always live like this?" "Only since my father died." She hesitated. "Sorry. It's fine. I was 21. He left me the company. I didn't want it. But you took it anyway. Someone had to." Talia leaned back. "What was it he built?" "Real estate. Hotels mostly. Then I expanded into tech, logistics, energy. Now it's a little bit of everything. And yet you still drive yourself around." "I'm not dead. I like control." She studied him again, but this time quieter. "You don't seem like what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A guy who talks about his watch more than the weather. Who only brings women to places like this to impress them. Who thinks charm is something you practice in a mirror." "I've been that guy," Nolan admitted. "But he bored me." "And what about now?" He met her eyes. "Now I'm not bored." Talia didn't look away. "You don't know me." "I know I want to." She pushed her plate aside. "I work 6 days a week. I fall asleep on my couch half the time. My hands are scarred, and my hair smells like motor oil by noon. I like scars." She paused. "Why are you really here, Nolan?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Because when you looked at me this morning, you didn't see a last name or a bank balance. You just saw a guy with a busted car, and you looked like you could fix it. And maybe a few other things, too." She exhaled, then laughed softly. "You're ridiculous." but not wrong. The waiter cleared their plates as the sky outside darkened, the ocean now a black sheet under the moonlight. Talia glanced at her watch. I should go. I'll take you. She shook her head. I rode my bike here. It's chained around back. I'll have it delivered tomorrow. She frowned. You don't need to. I want to. She hesitated, then stood. All right, but don't expect me to start swooning. He followed her out, stopping beside the car. I wouldn't dare. You still don't know if I even like you. But you didn't walk out. She looked up at him. No, I didn't. Then she reached for the door handle herself and slipped inside. As Nolan pulled out into the night, he didn't turn on the music. He didn't fill the silence with idle chatter. He just drove, the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below and Talia sitting beside him, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded but not distant. Not distant at all. The next morning, Talia stared at the gleaming Ducati motorcycle parked outside her shop like it had landed from another planet. It was hers. She recognized the chipped paint on the gas tank, the mismatched rearview mirror she'd replaced last spring. But someone had clearly cleaned it top to bottom, replaced the rusted chain, and tightened the brakes. A white envelope was taped neatly to the throttle. Inside, a handwritten note in sharp, slanted ink tuned it up. Couldn't help myself. N. She squinted at the signature, then turned abruptly and walked into the garage, tossing the envelope onto her workbench as if it burned. Seriously, she muttered, grabbing a wrench and heading to the back of the shop. He thinks I can't fix my own bike? But the truth was, it ran smoother than it had in months. And the note hadn't irritated her as much as it should have. By midday, she was elbow-deep in a classic Corvette when a low, unfamiliar hum rolled into the lot. She glanced up just as a silver Bentley pulled in, door opening before the engine even cut off. Nolan stepped out, crisp white shirt rolled at the elbows, no tie, no jacket. He shielded his eyes against the sun, scanning until he saw her. Thought I'd stop by. I didn't call for a pickup, she said, not moving from under the hood. Wasn't here for business. She wiped her hands on a shop rag and finally stepped out. So what is this? You dropping in like it's a second date. Would have worn cologne if I thought it was. You shouldn't have touched my bike. He didn't flinch. It needed work. That's not the point. You don't fix someone's ride without asking. I thought you'd appreciate it. I appreciate people who ask. He stepped closer, but not too close. Noted. She crossed her arms. You always try to fix things with money? I didn't spend a cent. Just time. She tilted her head. That's worse. You'd rather I ignore it? I'd rather you respect that I can handle it. His jaw tightened, just for a second. I do. Then act like it. They stared at each other, the hum of a nearby sander the only sound between them. Finally, Talia exhaled, her posture shifting just slightly. You're not used to being told no, are you? She asked. Not often. And when someone does, I listen. Eventually. She huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. At least you're honest. I didn't come to argue. I came to ask you something. This should be good. There's an event tonight. Charity auction. One of those obnoxious black tie things with too much champagne and not enough authenticity. And you're going? Unfortunately. And you want me to what? Be your date. He nodded once. Exactly that. In what universe do I fit into a ballroom full of hedge fund billionaires and their Botoxed wives? I don't need you to fit in. I need you to be there. She studied him carefully. Why? He didn't look away. Because last night, I realized I haven't had a real conversation in weeks. And because when I walked out of that restaurant, I couldn't stop thinking about how you looked at the ocean like it owed you something. She blinked. That's a hell of a line. It's not a line. It's the truth. She rubbed the back of her neck. I don't own anything remotely appropriate for that kind of thing. I already took care of that. He opened the car door, pulled out a garment bag, and held it up. Just try it on. If you hate it, burn it. She eyed the bag like it might bite. What's in it? Something with pockets. And no heels. Her lip twitched. You remembered. I remember everything. She hesitated, then snatched the bag from his hand. You're lucky I'm curious. 7 o'clock. I'll wait outside. She didn't answer, just turned and disappeared into the shop. That evening, Nolan stood beside the Bentley, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate calm. The buzz of the street faded as the garage door creaked open. Talia stepped out slowly, arms crossed over a midnight blue jumpsuit tailored to fit her like it had been stitched onto her skin. The fabric shimmered faintly under the fading light, and her boots peeked out from beneath the wide legs. Her hair was up, messier than most would dare, but it worked just like everything else about her. You're staring, she said when she reached him. I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to concentrate on anything else tonight. She glanced down at herself. This thing's ridiculous. It's perfect. They'll know I don't belong. Let them. Inside the fundraiser, opulence clung to every surface. Crystal chandeliers, champagne pyramids, string quartets playing delicate covers of pop songs. Waiters glided past them with silver trays and practiced smiles. Talia's eyes flicked around, taking it all in without blinking. Who are these people to you? She asked under her breath. Clients, friends, enemies. Sometimes all three. A woman in a sequined gown brushed past and gave Talia a twice-over. She arched an eyebrow. You sure they're ready for me? They aren't. That's the point. They moved through the crowd, heads turning as they passed. Nolan exchanged greetings with a few men in tuxedos, but his attention never drifted far from her. When the auction began, he led her to a private table near the front. A man with salt and pepper hair leaned over. Nolan, this your date or your newest business venture? He asked, voice low but not quiet enough. Talia leaned in before Nolan could respond. Actually, I'm the one evaluating him. Still undecided. The man blinked, then chuckled awkwardly before turning away. Nolan looked at her sideways. That was surgical. I fixed things, remember? He leaned closer. You're doing more damage than you know. She didn't look at him. Then maybe you should have let the bike rust. But her hand resting on the tablecloth didn't pull away when his brushed against it a moment later. The auction continued, people clapping, paddles rising. Nolan bid once, twice, always winning. Not one person dared outbid him. Talia watched it all with impassive eyes. You don't even want half this stuff, she murmured. No, but I like watching them squirm. So this is what power looks like? No, this is what insecurity buys. She turned to him fully. And what about you? Still buying? He paused, then said, Not tonight. Her gaze softened, just slightly. Good, because I'm not for sale. I never thought you were. He tapped his glass gently against hers. But I might be. She studied him for a beat. Now that's a terrifying thought. Then she clinked her glass against his and drank. Talia stood at the edge of the rooftop, the breeze teasing strands of her hair loose from the twist she'd pinned into place. Below, the glittering lights of Los Angeles stretched endlessly, the city pulsing with a rhythm that felt far away from the clinking champagne glasses and murmured conversations behind her. Nolan stepped up beside her, 2 glasses in hand. He held one out silently, and she accepted it after a pause. This view's wasted on people who don't look up, she said, eyes fixed on the skyline. I used to think the same thing, Nolan replied, until I realized it's not about them. It's about who's standing next to you while you're looking. She glanced at him. You practice lines like that in the mirror? No, but I remember them when the right person's listening. She sipped her drink. You know, I could leave right now, walk out and ride home and just not make this complicated. You could, he agreed. But I won't, she added, quieter. And I don't know why. He didn't answer right away. The silence between them was different now, steady, expectant. The kind of silence that asked for honesty. I've spent years surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear, he said. Board members who nod before I finish speaking. Models who pretend to care about my favorite wine label. Friends who only call if stock prices drop. You picked that life. I did. But I didn't know how empty it would feel when things got quiet. Talia tilted her head. And now I'm standing next to the only person who's ever made silence feel like something I want more of. She looked away quickly, but not before he caught the flicker across her face, something close to fear, or maybe recognition. She'd opened doors she hadn't meant to. He could tell. I'm not built for your world, she said. I'm not asking you to be. You say that now, she said. But one day you'll wake up and want someone who knows how to blend in. Someone who doesn't get grease under her nails or say the wrong thing at a fundraiser. I don't want someone who blends in. I want someone who stops me in my tracks. She didn't respond. The city lights blinked beneath them, steady and unwavering. I lied, Nolan said suddenly. She turned toward him slowly. About what? Earlier, when you asked if I always live like this. She waited. I don't. Not really. I play the part because it's expected. But it's never felt like mine, not until you looked at me like I wasn't wearing it. I don't need your money, Nolan. I don't want you to. She set her glass down on the ledge, arms folded against the chill. You're used to people falling for the version of you they see in magazines. I'm not that person. I'm not either. He stepped in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I'm the guy who couldn't stop thinking about the way your voice dropped when you were under that hood. And the way you didn't flinch when I handed you my name. She watched him, guarded. I don't believe in fairy tales. Neither do I. But I believe in you. A long moment passed between them. Then she said, if I say yes to this. Whatever this is, you don't get to disappear when it's inconvenient. I won't. You don't get to pretend I don't exist when you're back in your boardroom. I wouldn't. And you don't get to fix me like you fixed that car. He reached for her hand, slowly, wrapping his fingers around hers. I wouldn't dare. She didn't pull away. Behind them, the party continued, polished shoes on marble floors, crystal laughter, music that didn't quite reach the rooftop. But none of it touched them now. Talia exhaled, her defenses easing by degrees. So what now? I was thinking I'd ask you something, he said. If it involves a helicopter, I'm walking. No helicopters, he said, almost smiling. Just a key. He pulled a small square box from his jacket pocket and opened it. Inside was a vintage key, worn but polished, resting on a velvet cushion. That's not a ring, she said carefully. No. It's the key to a shop I just bought. Down in Venice Beach. Big enough for 6 bays, with a loft upstairs. Needs someone who knows what they're doing. She stared at it for a long moment. You bought a garage? I invested in one. But only if you say yes. To what exactly? To not walking away tonight. To giving us space to figure this out. She reached out, running a thumb over the key. You're insane. Probably. Then she took it. And just like that, the air between them shifted again. Not with tension, but with something stronger. Certain. Weeks later, the grand opening of the new shop was packed. Mechanics, racers, and curious locals filled the space, admiring the clean lines, the glass walls that looked out onto the street, and the row of rare cars parked out front, one of which was Nolan's Shelby, now restored to perfection. Talia stood at the entrance, grease already on her cheek, directing a delivery of engine parts with the ease of someone who belonged. Nolan watched her from the edge of the room, arms crossed, content to let her shine. She caught his eye, walked over, and handed him a wrench. You're late. The lift's stuck. I'm in a suit. You'll live. He followed her into the garage, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. Later that night, long after the last guest had left, they sat on the shop roof with beers in hand, legs dangling over the edge. I never thought I'd end up here, she said. I hoped I would. She looked over at him. You still think I stole your heart? No, he said. I think you rebuilt it. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Good. Because I'm not giving it back. And somewhere below them, the city kept moving, but up here, everything finally felt still. Complete. Real. Talia tightened the last bolt on the vintage Porsche and stepped back, stretching her arms high above her head as the garage door creaked open. A golden wash of late afternoon sunlight spilled into the space, catching the edge of Nolan's shadow as he leaned against the frame, arms folded, expression unreadable. You know, he said, stepping inside slowly, I thought I'd be jealous of this place. of how much of your attention it gets. She wiped her hands on her jeans, not bothering with a reply yet. But watching you work on that engine just now, I think I finally get it. This isn't just a job to you. It's the only thing that's ever let you breathe. She walked past him toward the sink, letting the water run over her fingers before turning back. You didn't come here to talk about engines. No, he admitted. I came here to ask what happens now. I thought we already answered that. We answered the part about staying, he said. Not the part about what we're building. Talia leaned back against the counter, arms loosely crossed. You're used to building things fast. Deals. Empires. I don't work like that. I'm not asking for fast, he said. I'm asking for real. She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Real scares me. It scares me too, he said without hesitation. But I'd rather be terrified beside you than safe without you. Her voice dropped. You said once you didn't want someone who blends in. But this us it doesn't blend anywhere. I don't want it to, Nolan said. I want it to stand out so loudly that no one forgets what it looks like. Talia stepped toward him slowly. You're really not going to run when this gets messy? I already ran from too many things before I met you, he said. I'm done running. She stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the heat of his breath. Then stopped talking and prove it. He reached into his jacket and pulled something small from the inner pocket. A ring. Not flashy. No diamonds. Just a simple brushed gold band with a single inscription inside. He held it out between them. I know this isn't how things are usually done. I know we didn't plan it or talk about it or map it out like a business deal. But I also know I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Talia's breath caught. He continued, voice steady. I don't want a wedding that makes headlines or a ceremony on a yacht. I want a courthouse, a mechanic's shop, or a beach at midnight, I don't care. As long as it's you at the end of the aisle. You're serious. I've never been more. She didn't reach for the ring right away. Her fingers hovered above it, trembling slightly before she looked up at him. You're not afraid of waking up one day and wondering if you made a mistake? I already made that mistake once, he said. I lived a life that looked perfect on paper. But none of it meant anything until the day I heard you curse at a timing belt. A slow, genuine smile broke across her face. You're impossible, she said softly. And yet here I am. She took the ring from his palm and closed her hand around it. You'll probably regret giving me this. Only if you say no? Talia stepped back, turned the ring over in her fingers, and then without ceremony slipped it onto her own hand. Then I guess you're stuck with me. Nolan exhaled, a laugh caught in the middle of it, and pulled her into his arms. She melted into him, her head tucked beneath his chin, the scent of engine grease and sunlight clinging to her like something holy. They didn't rush to plan anything. There was no need for grand announcements or press releases. A month later, they stood barefoot in the sand behind the garage, the sun dipping low over the waves, and exchanged vows in front of a retired judge, two mechanics who'd become friends, and his assistant who cried harder than anyone. Talia wore a white linen jumpsuit. Nolan wore a gray linen shirt and no shoes. They said their vows with wind in their hair and laughter in their throats, and when it was over, he lifted her off the ground and spun her around like he'd won the only thing that ever mattered. The garage stayed open every day after that, though Nolan spent far more time there than he ever expected. He learned how to change oil, how to replace filters, how to get his hands dirty. Talia taught him with patience and sarcasm in equal measure. Their nights were filled with takeout on the shop floor, jazz playing through an old speaker, and the kind of quiet comfort that made every prior version of love feel like static. He brought her coffee every morning, just the way she liked it, black, with a splash of almond milk and no sugar. She left notes in his suit pockets when he had to go to meetings, usually drawn in grease pencil and always mildly inappropriate. They didn't have to say, I love you, every day. It was in the way he tightened every bolt she missed and the way she heated his dinner when he got home late. In the way he always parked his car crooked just to hear her complain and the way she always let him. There were fights, of course. Real ones. About schedules, expectations, the way he sometimes forgot to eat when he was buried in contracts, or how she refused to hire an assistant even when the shop got too busy. But they argued with respect and they made up with intention. On their first anniversary, Nolan surprised her with a small cottage near the coast, 5 minutes from the garage. It wasn't big, but it had a sprawling backyard, a hammock, and a kitchen she actually used. She painted the living room herself. He let her pick out every piece of furniture, even the ones he hated. One night, long after the world had gone quiet, Talia lay in bed beside him, her hand resting on his chest. "I used to think I'd never belong anywhere," she whispered. "And now I know I don't have to. I just have to belong with someone. And I do." He kissed her forehead, his voice warm against her skin. "You always did." And outside, the city breathed around them. But inside, two hearts beat steady, rebuilt from the wreckage of their pasts, stronger than ever, together, forever.